Hello, this is Jon Speelman with my video version of my latest column, number 117.4, which is coming out on July the 17th, so this Sunday. I'm recording on the Saturday. And before I carry on, I'm just going to check that I am recording, which I assume I am, but you never quite know, so you're going to get a silly screen for a second. And I am. Excellent. So I've called this column Asking the Right Questions, and I started with rather a long rant, which you're very welcome to ignore, basically about technology and helplines. And what happened was, well, a couple of things happened. My email went down a couple of months ago, and I ended up phoning the wrong helpline at 3 o'clock in the morning, which was very stupid, I suppose. But it's the anxiety, is it something permanent that's happened, or is it just a temporary glitch? And of course, when I got to the point where I could ask, what is the status of the mail server, it said, oh, we're fine, to my great annoyance, since it obviously wasn't fine. Yes, I was cross with the mail server. And then recently, the last few days, I had a problem with my wireless network at home, and basically after 3 hours or something on the phone to Vodafone, who provide my router, and who are actually lovely even though they couldn't solve the problem, I realised eventually, when I stopped having to scrabble trying to put passwords into mobile phones and trying to balance laptops on the edge of my desk, that it was a problem with the router. Luckily, we had a techie friend staying, and the next morning, so I waited till the morning, till we'd had coffee, till I was semi-human. We tried to solve it. It was still being bad-tempered, and he said, why don't you just scrap it and get a new extender? And then he put my router. I just hadn't realised that a router is a physical object that beams radio waves, so it would be happier when it was higher up. So it's now been moved, and now it's covering most of my flat anyway. But I did have 3 hours or something, because once the techies, the low-level techies, get onto a script where they said they're trying to solve your problem without knowing what your problem is, then of course they go through the whole script, and then they reach the end of their tether. I mean, I was perfectly amicable with all of them. And then they have to pass you on to the next person, and the next person has to do another 10 minutes of security, because heaven forfend that they should be able to pass this status on, and then you get passed to another one, and blah blah blah. Anyway, so this led to the question of what questions you should ask when you're playing chess, which is actually what this is about, of course, eventually. And I said, well, of course, if you're defending against immediate threats, you can't really ask any questions of your own. You just have to answer your opponents. I'm not sure if I quite put it like that. But then I said, well, the person who was fantastic at understanding the middle game, just with total clarity and answering the questions and putting his opponents under pressure, was Anatoly Karpov. And I've given two famous games. Sorry, that's a different database. Here is the database I want, column 174. And I've given two famous games by Anatoly Karpov. The first one is this one, which is Karpov Unzika. It's a Roy Lopez. It's a very famous game, really just because of one move. Okay, so on they went. They were playing the old, what is it called? Lost for a second what it's called. The old variation, the old main line. Anyway, I think it's named, is it Chigorin maybe it's named after. And they played some moves. This knight c6 move loses some tempi, but it does make white determine the centre, which is something black wants to sort out. And Karpov got some advantage, and he's moving his lumps around merrily. And round about here, they got to this position, did they? G6. So he's improving his pieces, going away. And now Karpov starts to threaten to double rooks, and actually taking rooks and playing c4 is probably better than what he did. He went c4, bishop b1, queen d8. So he thinks he's going to take and play rook a8 and everything's going to be excellent. And Karpov plays a tremendous move. Now I have to say that this is a move that engines do find immediately nowadays. They just go ping and say, oh, that's the move I want to play. And you could slap them really. You think, God, this is annoying that these engines are this good now. So bishop a7, fantastic move, stops the exchange of rooks, gives white time to maneuver, take control of the a file and then play afterwards, and basically is very good for white. I mean, Stockfish, the latest Stockfish, which is godlike compared to any other software I've seen. I'm sure there are other very, very good ones now. I mean, I use Houdini most of the time, which is not as good, but it's much more human. It gives assessments in the sort of between 0 and +1.5 or something, and Stockfish goes ping, or rather a louder noise, da-da-da-dum, and suddenly it's +4 or 5 or something from nowhere, and you think, my God, that's probably the truth, but a scary one. So it says something like +1, which is nothing for it. But this position is really unpleasant to play for black. And what Karpov's done is he's just understood that by blocking the A file, one day he'll move it at a moment when it causes havoc. And black always has to watch this. F4, this allows e takes F4, but both of these horses are miles away from E5. This knight can go to there, but you have to get an F6 as well. The other knight is actually 4 squares away. It takes 4 moves to go from C7 to E5, as I think most strong players know, but it's quite an important thing that a knight takes so long. So, for instance, when you have a white knight in F3 in a Sicilian, where black's played E5 and D6, it takes 4 moves to get the knight to D5 where you actually want it. Okay, they played some moves, probably taking was better, I think. And now the engine says you can take this, knight G3, F4, knight F5, queen F8, and claims that it isn't crushing. Now, it's not obvious to me at all. I'm not even really trying to work it out, but I can believe black is going to try to play something like bishop G6 and take the knight or something, and maybe it won't be the end of the world. But, I mean, in practice, you don't play moves like that. And now Karpov plays the beautiful move bishop D1, controlling H5. H6 looks like a bad move to me, but it's probably in deep trouble anyway. It's just absolutely poetry. So now he starts thinking, I might treble on the A file as well. Everything is so controlled. Of course, you can't take twice because of knight F6 check. I don't even know if so I don't know if, I mean, he could have gone via F1 anyway. And now he gets his queen in. That's a very good move. You can't take that because a billion horses land in your head. Or 2, actually. And I think about here he resigned. And the position is absolutely horrible. Queen F7, he hasn't lost any material yet, but it's going to be the end of the world. Something like this is utterly disgusting for black. Absolutely foul. So, a very, very good game by Karpov, in which he just kept total control, and your man never got anywhere near to equalising. And, I mean, here, you know, you are going to lose. If you went queen F7 or something, knight takes F6, you tried swapping queens and took the knight and played king G7, there would be knight E8 check, for instance. I mean, it's just foul. And Karpov, it must have been so disheartening. I played him a few times, and I did notice this at least once, one of my games where I just felt I was playing God. That, you know, you just know that you've got no chance at all. There's nothing you can do about it, and so it's all feels totally hopeless. That was one of them. I must have put something in, not very much. The next one is a beautiful game, which people may have seen. This is a game with Boris Spassky. I think it's from the match after Bobby Fischer refused to defend his title, or he's in the midst of not doing so. So it was effectively a World Championship match, though of course a candidate's final. I think it's candidate's final, isn't it? No, it's a semi-final. I can't remember. Who did Karpov play in the final then? lost it. I could look it up if you like. That would involve fiddling around. But okay, it was a very important match, obviously. And they played a Scheveningen. Oh, did he play? He probably played Korchnoi, didn't he, in the final or something, Karpov, I suppose. And now they tend to go knight b3. The reason for this is that black's idea is to take in d4 and to play bishop c6, so to get his position a bit more ergonomic. And this prevents that. a5 is one move, it was what Spassky played. And now he probably should have gone e5 actually first, followed by bishop c6. That's a reasonable way to play. Or bishop e6 maybe as well. Because what happened was, he didn't really appreciate that Karpov was just going to take this and move. So we look at this position. Black's got a beautiful knight in b4. The pawn on c6 is controlling the white knight on c3. Black's kingside is slightly weakened. If the dark squared bishops were off, black would be doing really well in this position, as long as he could just defend the f-file. But as it is, white's got the two bishops, and he's got chances to slowly to improve, and he did so magnificently. I don't really know why he's stopping knight g4 at this moment, but he did do this. Here, knight d7 threatened, by the way, to play bishop c5, which would hugely improve black's position, because then you'd have some dark squares to go to, and white couldn't harass you with bishop h6 in any circumstances. This all happened. Rook to there, queen to there, rook to here, rook to there. Now this is, I don't know if you can see the next move. Maybe if you haven't seen it yet, go into replay training and just think what white would play in this position. So I think he played, did he play a couple more moves first? Have I got the right position? In a moment the thing is, black's trying to exchange rooks and play rook d8 and maybe get some play. White thinks, which piece do I have which is not on a particularly good square? And he realises that it is the knight. And so he plays knight b1. Beautiful move. Just preparing to reposition the knight. Takes was a threat and knight takes c2. You've stopped that. And suddenly black doesn't have really many threats. So black played some move, queen to b7. Now king h2 is a good move. I mean, the knight move, knight c3 to b1 is root 5, isn't it? It's the square root of 2 squared plus 1 squared by Pythagoras theorem. Or it's a 2-1 move. But it's a very little move. King h2 is a very little move, threatening g3, which would win at this moment. So that prevents g3 because of bishop f6. If g3, you'd play rook takes rook, bishop takes rook, bishop f6, and white would have weakened himself. He kicks the horse, and now he plays a splendid move. He realises that if g3 rook takes rook is not that great. He thinks, my knight on b1 isn't quite working yet. What shall I do next? I want my knight to work. And he asks the question, I presume, unconsciously really, it just sort of pings out to him what he should do. How many rooks do I want on the board? I'm doing stuff in the f-file, so I'd like to keep 2 rooks. So he goes there. Tiny little move, preparing to improve his knight. And probably threatening g3, by the way, and rook over to f2, certainly toying with doing that. And rook f8 is defends, the knight comes out, bishop comes back, knight comes up again. By now bishop b6 you could take an e5, probably, well, I don't know if there's a pin or not. Or you could just move your bishop away somewhere and say, so what? What's that bishop doing there? Maybe you could take and play knight g5 actually and win. Must be very close. I mean, black's position is incredibly passive here. He plays f6, which is a miserable move. I'll take it off. Well, no, I'll leave it in replay training. So now he takes the d file. His queen comes in. He takes. If rook takes, I think you can go knight takes e5 then. Black tries to pin you. And I had this aberration the first time I looked at this position. You go bishop f4, pawn takes knight, bishop g5. But after bishop takes bishop, the queen is protected by the horse and a6. So you lose. But actually you do this. Queen, bishop f4 takes... No, you don't do that. Sorry, you go here. Here, here. Takes. And white is a winning attack, basically. Huge attack. Black is not going to survive this. Unsurprised. I mean, you can just see it. Bishop d6, you'll have rook g3 check and queen h8 check and rook g7 check. So it's just not going to be possible. I'm wondering if you can try bishop f8 here. I suppose I should try bishop f8. I might even have to ask an engine. So if we go bishop d6, new variation, we go check here, check here, here. And if we go bishop f8, then how do we do this? Can we go check and bishop h6? Is that going to win, or is there going to be something cleaner? I can't at the moment see why that wins, which is a bit perturbing. I mean, I think I'm missing a big hit. I don't know if I'm missing that you can do something where you go rook checks, rook takes bishop with check, bishop h6 check, bishop somewhere else check. Maybe that leads to mate, actually. I don't know. I think I'm tempted to ask the Great Oracle itself, which is pathetic, actually, because I know there's a win, but I can't see it, so I'm sorry about that. And it is going to say to me that you play rook g3 check here, bishop here, here, and then what you do? Then you go queen g6. Yeah, we got to there. Queen f7, queen f5, queen e8, and now you can take everything and go queen c8 check. Or you can go queen f6, but I mean taking everything and going queen c8 check, presumably. Oh no, then you got queen f8, queen takes knight, queen d6 check. So you just take this and queen f8 check here. And about now we go, well actually, now we can just take, can't we? Alright, so it's a slaughter, but I should have put it in. So what actually happened was he went bishop d8. I don't know if you have to play knight g5. You can, knight takes e5, but you would if you can, I suppose. He actually went here, 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 here. And now the coup de grace, a nice final blow to smash, you can see on this, sorry. The final coup de grace is rook takes bishop, and he resigned, because after rook takes rook, bishop e7, Black's king side gets ripped to shreds. You go queen f6 check, and the knight comes in, and the queen comes in, and the bishop comes in, and Black gets mated. So a magnificent game of chess, in fact. Really brilliant game of chess by Karpov. And the moves I really like knight b1, of course. Well, the whole thing, but knight b1's very nice, and actually I think that rook e2 isn't it? King h2's lovely, and actually rook e2 is almost a better move here. So well done, Karpov. Fantastic games. I know they're games people may have seen before. So we go on to something recent, which is Hans-Moker Neumann against Fabiano Caruana from the Bundesliga recently. And I don't really know what's going on earlier. It's the thing is, eventually they got to this position where White's won the exchange, but Black's got two passed pawns, and it turns out it's very good for him. In fact, Neumann played really well around about here. And they got to this position. I don't think, just checking, I assume king f7 doesn't work, that you have time to go and hit the knight or something. Is king f7 possibly a problem, trying to get the king out? Let me just ask the engine. I just want to ask about king f7. Is it interested in king f7? Do you not have time? King f2? h4, king g2. Right, I see, and you bring this round, do you? And this is okay, is it? King g2. You couldn't go king e3, I think. So apparently that's not obvious to me at all. I hadn't looked at it really, because the position, what happened was, somebody I teach who's a good player and looks at a lot of internet stuff got me to this position and said, how does white defend? So because you're asked the question, it's actually quite easy to do. We'll put it in replay mode. I'm sorry. Let's have this. Because you got this question, he goes 92. Sorry, black goes 92 here. You think, okay, he played rook c2, g3 check, king f3, g2, rook checks, king takes pawn, rook g8. And it's not that hard to see the move knight f4 in that position. But I didn't even really think that. I just thought if there's a solution, it must involve trying to attack the knight with check. That's just what popped out of my head. And so I immediately said this. So I'll show you first what happened in the game. Rook takes c2, check here, here, here. Knight f4 exclam. Can't go king g3 because the rook's defending from g8. So he eventually tried this and he lost with the rook against queen, of course, fairly soon thereafter. And so the alternative is to play check, check. Now if king takes pawn, which is sort of the main line, you can go rook back. And now of course the knight's on prise with check, so you just draw. I mean, black can do whatever he likes. You can go knight d4 check and win the rook, but you lose both pawns. So actually this is more critical. I mean, obviously I didn't see king d6, or I saw it was legal, but I didn't know it was going to happen. All I knew was that I had to look at this. Now I don't know if king f6 is interesting actually. Is king f6 interesting? Check here. Wonder what happens after. Well, we'll look at king f6 in a minute. The solution now is that after check here, here, you give check, and you get to play rook to there. So now you're threatening to go. You're not threatening king takes knight yet, are you? So you what happens if he goes king takes pawn? I mean, I know this is supposed to be a draw. This is not. I assume you have to go king f2 and then go rook e1, and then you manage to get your pieces around. So let's put notation on now. So I gave knight f4 here, king g3 takes king h2, and that's reasonably okay. If king takes this, I'm going to ask the engine again. I should have done this really before I showed it to you, but I think you're going to go king f2 now, almost certainly. King f2. No, you're not going to go g1 equals. You're going to go something like here. Rook e1, knight f4, king here, and you're in time. Basically, you can't do very much now as black. The king is blocking this king, and you're not going to be able to win. I mean, how could you possibly win? I suppose maybe by getting the king somewhere down here, but it doesn't look plausible. Okay, so this is a draw. The other thing I wanted to check, I've just asked the question, can you go king f6 in this position? Then e7, e7, and how is this now? King f7. I see, you can go e7, king f7, rook c2, check here, and if g2, pawn equals queen, white actually wins. So again, you have to go knight d4 check. Now if you went king f6, e7, so now why after king d6 do you not go e7? Because then if you go e7, I imagine king takes rook is probably winning. King takes rook, pawn equals queen, and we can ask a table base. If it says that it's winning, it's winning. And that seems highly plausible. It would be winning at this stage. And Stockfish is telling me it is. A table base would tell me that. So the question you had to ask in this game, and again you were told that there was a question, was what could you do which is different? And I thought I must look for a way to give check. And so I found the move, but of course I hadn't solved it at all. I'd merely started the solution process. Now the other two I've got a study, and in this study this is white to play and win, and one question you can ask is why is there a pawn on g7? And I think it's unsurprising in a study that the reason for the pawn being on g7 is to deflect the king there, and I'll show you. It's a very pretty study. You may want to try to solve it by yourself. It might be a good idea, I think. So rook to here, bishop to here. Now you go check to put the king on the diagonal, and your only move is to go back. This took me 5 minutes or something, 7 minutes when people showed me this in a pub, and this is rather beautiful because all you can do is to get to rook, to bishop and on rook's pawn against king. There's nothing better. You've trapped the rook due to this rather pretty setup. So that's very nice. And then I started talking about the Turton manoeuvre. I thought another pattern you might look for is which way round do I want my pieces in the diagonal. This now, and I talked about the Turton manoeuvre, and this is the Turton manoeuvre is where you put your pieces the other way around on a diagonal. Now I think actually I've got this, I ought to paste this into the diagram actually, oughtn't I? Because I'm not sure. So if we go down here, near the bottom, oh, we lost it, did we? So I need actually to have a, yeah, I see what's happened. That's here. So, control, we want this, don't we? Control, no, we don't want this. Sometimes you want to change the order of your pieces on a file or diagonal. Maybe a rank. Maybe rank or diagonal. That's likely rank. It just less commonly rank or diagonal. For instance, if you have queen c2, bishop e4, you may move the queen, play bishop b1, and later queen c2 or queen d3. This is a Turton manoeuvre. Now I'm not sure if a Turton manoeuvre after the problem here by Henry Turton. Okay, so I'm not sure if actually the Turton manoeuvre is a bit more specific than that, but this will do. And in this one, white plays bishop h8, which is lovely, in order to put the queen in front of the bishop. And the main line goes b4, queen g7, rook to there, queen takes pawn mate, or rook takes bishop, which actually I think is probably more of a main line, really. Queen a7 mate. And bishop h8 is the only move. Then I wondered, when I look at a problem, I wonder why all the pieces are on the board. So I know why the h-pawn is there, to stop rook takes bishop being check. But I wondered why white had a pawn on b6. And the reason for that is that if the pawn's not in b6, I couldn't see it, so I asked an engine. I'm sorry, I'm lazy sometimes. Is because bishop b4 then works. And if pawn takes bishop, queen g1 check, king a2, queen a7 mate. And if rook a8, queen checks, pawn promotes, bishop back to c3 mate. Is that, yeah, that's right. Or king a2, queen b1 mate. So that's why you've got the pawn on b6. But when you look at a study, or in this case a problem, you should wonder, well, one way to approach it if you can't solve it is to think, why is that piece on the board? And I thought it must be something to do with closing the 6th rank, but actually it's to close the G1 to A7 diagonal. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this. Hope it's been interesting. I'm going to be back. I believe that in a fortnight it's the 31st of July. I'm actually on the 16th today, so I won't be back then. I will be back on the 7th of August with something else. And I hope you've enjoyed this, and cheers, and let's finish.